on the internet and I saw Greg, HomeCare Breakthrough Solutions. And I read a little bit about him. He's one of us. He ran a company down in Tampa, Florida, and he was struggling. He got in the business like all of us did. We saw family members struggling to find home care and knew it could be better, and that's why he got in the business. He gets in the business. This is the hardest business I know of to do. He found that out too. So they kind of sunk to the bottom. Then he tightened up his bootstraps, and he figured out how to make it work. He ended up being a million-something dollar company.
$3 million.
$3 million company. $3 million. $3 million company, and figured out how to make it work. He's now going to help other people figure out how to make it work. And he is Georgia. He moved from Florida. He figured out, that our ball teams are better than Florida's. And so he came on here. So I wanted to introduce Greg. Come on up.
Thank you. Thank you. So I first want to say that you guys are lucky to have a group like this. Give a round of applause to Eddie and Beth because honestly, these are some pretty big issues that you all are dealing with. And to have someone that can advocate, like it seems that Eddie's doing for you guys, is so important. Especially with these laws and legislation that is coming down the pipeline. I don't know how surviving $15 an hour minimum wage is going to happen, but hopefully with Eddie and the crew, you guys can win the battle. So, by show of hands, how many of you would like to grow your home care business? Yes, thank you. People that aren't raising their hands, they don't want to. Okay. They're a $20 million business and they're good. So I appreciate you guys having me here today. I'm glad that Beth actually found me to come speak. Today I'm going to do a presentation. My business model, I do a lot of education, training, webinars, and I'll tell you my story in a little bit. The title of my presentation is my growth strategy that added $1,062,964 in new revenue to my private duty home care business in 12 months. I was able to do that while selling less, without spending more money on advertising, and at the time without any salespeople. So, the reality is that what I teach is to help you grow revenue. Having more revenue solves a lot of problems. With legislation, you're able to fight and battle certain laws, and then there's ones that you're not going to be able to win. And one of the things that will help you is to have more revenue in your business, right? If you have to attract more caregivers, well, what if you were able to donate or to invest in a resource that's their primary focus, right? Or maybe you need a second person to do it. So whatever your business is, I promise you that revenue can solve a lot of problems. I have a gift for you guys. So long-term care insurance agents was my number one referral source. And just for being here today, if you guys take down my email and you shoot me an email, I have a training. It's like a 2-hour plus online training that I do on how to penetrate that market. And that includes both internally and the outside sales part. So if you want a free copy of that, just shoot me an email and I will send that to you. I don't have the exact number. I know easily we did over $5 million in revenue just from that one niche. So, got a question for you. How many of you feel like this, where you've tried, and you have these goals that you've set, but you couldn't quite get there? Like you feel like you're kind of hitting a wall. How many of you have ever felt like that? Thank you. Thank you for your honesty. I appreciate it. Or like you're buried up to your head in responsibility between compliance and recruiting and sales and all of this, right? Yeah. And like Beth said, this is not an easy business. It's not. So it's a rewarding business, but it's not the easiest business in the world. Part of what I want to say is, for those of you that are struggling, part of the problem, and you're not alone, is that When you get into this business, you're not really given a manual. Even if you're part of a franchise, you're not always being taught properly how to successfully market your business. One of the things that I found, because I was part of a franchise, is that even the best franchise systems, even the best sales systems out there, there's some gaps that I discovered. And prior to getting to the business, I actually had 15 plus years of sales experience, and I still struggled. So there's gaps that I discovered along the way. So if you're feeling like that, it's not your fault. This slide is really just about, besides the regulatory issues that you guys are dealing with, you're also dealing with big investment firms, hospitalist groups that are starting to invest. If you haven't noticed, they're acquiring home health companies, actually starting to get into the home care industry as well. And that trend will continue because when you look at the demographics, it's very attractive. Like Eddie said, this is still a relatively new industry. And even with all the stuff going on, there's still money to be made in the industry. It's not just about the money, I realize that, but that is what's attracting investors. So we have to do things differently, right? Eddie was here in the days where you probably just had a business, the phone would ring, and you got the case. Am I wrong? Was there a point?
Actually, yes, because at that time, insurance companies, home health couldn't do this business. Home health had it, and they gave it away, and now they want it back. But they ended up giving it away. But at that time, insurance companies were calling, looking for people to take care of them, of their beneficiaries.
So my point is that before most of you were in this business, there's some of you that were in here, been doing this 30 years, but it was a lot easier. Am I right? It was a lot easier. Right now you have a lot of competition. You have companies that are popping up left and right. So what I want you guys to just realize is that you have to continue to evolve and improve your skills. Bottom line, you have to it's competition. It's like survival of the fittest, right? The people that are able to continue evolve and grow, because I know home care businesses that were doing well in the last 5 years, revenue's gone down. One lady I spoke to, $1.4 million in lost revenue. And what was working then is not necessarily working now. So how many of you feel like this now or have at some point, I know I have, where you feel like you are literally change your work? Sometimes 60, 70 hour weeks, right? There's just so many things that have to get done. So I tell people, and this is just coming from personal experience, you're one sales system away, really. It's all about lead, it's not all about, but it's a big part of growing your business, lead generation, converting, and when you have the right system in place, it does get easier and you have more consistency. So my disclaimer, I'm not sitting here telling you guys that just by listening to my presentation that you're going to grow over $1 million in 1 year. For me, at first I was just trying to save my business and my marriage. How many of you work with your spouse? Carefully, thank you. It's not easy, right? It's not easy. We had difficulty kind of separating. So it's work life and home life blended, and it was just insane. So then we got to the point where we had the business mostly running on autopilot. And what I mean by that is that we had the freedom to choose how we were going to spend our time in the business. Right? We were a startup. Some people in this industry are buying a pre-existing. We were a startup, right, from scratch, which is hard. And we were doing everything and on call. And I remember nights where my wife was like, if we have to continue doing on call, we have to sell the business. She's like, I don't care, right? So we got to a point where it didn't happen overnight, but we got to a point where the business truly was running mostly without us, and she was managing our administrator with 1 hour weekly meetings. So I just share that because I want you guys to realize what's possible for those of you that aren't there yet in your business. It is possible. It may not seem like it right now, but it is possible. And I know, trust me, sounds like Eddie has a huge business. I know there's businesses that are doing way more than what we've been able to do. They're sort of like this echelon, but I don't know the exact number. How many of you know, like, the average home care business does what? About 1.1, 1.2 million in revenue. All I can say is that when you're at that point, at least for us, the business was still running us. You know, it gets easier as you get bigger because you can start to build in layers. So I'm grateful that Beth invited me to be here. Thank you. I was told, we can't pay you, we don't have the money, we can't feed you, but you can, you have to provide your own transportation. I live 45 minutes, an hour from here. But she said you can present what your services are at the end. So is that okay with you guys if at the end, after the presentation, I share a little bit about what we do? I put together something special for you guys, so we'll talk about that at the end. So who is this training for? Really agencies that are, it doesn't matter what stage in business you are, whether you're a newbie or someone who's been in business for 30 years. The stuff that I teach is, I don't want to use the word cutting edge, it's more evolved, right? It's what helped me grow, because the selling that I used to do, I had to get better at it. So it doesn't matter what stage of business you're in, it's for people that want to accelerate revenue growth, while avoiding some of the selling pitfalls that a lot of people make in the industry. For people that want to incorporate a more effective way of communicating your message, and then helping you connect more quickly with referral sources as well as prospects. And it's for those of you that want to improve your overall, the number of referrals that you get as well as your conversions. Who's this not for? People that aren't going to take action, right? And I've been there before. Like, I've been to so many different trainings in my life, right? The franchise offer trainings, and there's all these different things. And then you have all these great ideas and you write them down, and you get so busy in your business that you do nothing, right? Or maybe you implement one thing, right? She's saying, right? We've all been there, right? I'm hoping that you at least take notes and make a commitment to yourself that you will start to implement and start to put some of this stuff into practice. Because knowing and not doing is still not knowing. Does that make sense? Yes? Thank you.
Yes.
All right. And then for people who want to carve out, I say at least 1 to 2 hours a week to improve your skills and to improve your business by implementing strategies that work, right? We get so busy, and I know some of you are sitting there like, how am I going to find another hour or two? But if you are consistently just working in your business and you don't block off the time to work on your business, you're going to stay in the same place, right? You're going to stay in the same place. You have to carve out that time and figure out how you're going to do it, right? All right, so if you implement, it'll help you increase your conversions, have more clients, have a staff that buys into your sales approach, because you'll see what I'm talking about in a bit, help you position your company for more substantial growth. But really, more importantly, I think for me, and probably for most of you, I'm going to call these the intrinsic factors, right? Where, how many of you would like to have more peace of mind and freedom in your business? Yes? Thank you. I appreciate it. Or no longer feel like the business is running you, right? I was like, yes. Or hopefully get to a point where you can actually experience some level of financial freedom in your business. How many of you would like that? Yes, thank you. So I've said it already, I'll say it again, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but the old way of selling is dying. The point in business where you just took a phone call and you automatically are getting that case, you know, it doesn't work as well, right? You have to get better. I've seen a number of different modalities when it comes to sales. One is the, pushing, being pushy and aggressive. Most people in home care aren't like that. I will say that. The one thing that they fail, not all, but a lot of people that I've worked with, that they fail to do is properly positioning your company and your services, and sort of imprinting yourself in the mind of your referral sources and your prospects the right way. So hopefully you'll learn some new ways to do that today. At the baseline of what I teach, so the model that I teach, it's based on a strategy called Preeminence Selling. It's the foundation, and it's based on serving your clients at the highest level, right? And some of you may be sitting here and say, well, we do that already, and that's great. What I teach is serving in a way that is strategic and unparalleled to what you are probably doing right now. So my goal for you is to help you realize the best way to exponentially improve your sales conversions, grow revenue, and provide more freedom in your business is through preeminent selling. And the ideal way to sell your home care services moving forward is using these preeminent sales strategies and tactics. So my preface to all of this, guys, is that I'm going to try to fit all of this into my allotted time. When I do this training, I usually have a lot more time, so I'm going to talk fast sometimes. So if you guys can write down your questions, I'll do my best to answer them at the end. So if we do a Q&A session. All right, is it okay if I tell you who I am now? First of all, I'm a husband to my beautiful wife. She's up there at the top. I've got 4 girls. So it's a surprise, like my hair is not totally gray yet, but I hear that that'll be when we get them all into the teenage years. So we'll see. I've been selling products and services since I was 16 years old. That picture of me was with Tony Robbins. I'm part of a mastermind group called Inner Circle, where I share best practices with marketing and sales with a lot of high-level entrepreneurs. We've done over $22 million in private duty home care business, which is probably minuscule to what Eddie's done. He's been in the business 30 years. My wife and I built and sold a multi-million-dollar private home care agency, and we were able to get a multiple of 2.9. Which in the franchise world is good. I don't know in the non-franchise world if that's considered good or not. So these are different roles I had selling. I was mastering the upsell at McDonald's. It's true.
Would you like fries with that?
Yeah, that's it. That is it. I'm not kidding. And it helped. Like learn. Oh, upsell. Okay. So above ground pools. I did staffing, advertising, solicited donations for the Police Benevolent Association, sold vacations over the phone. Prior to starting my home care business, the thing that I'll say helped me financially be positioned for that was being in the mortgage business, and then finally, obviously, for 10 years, selling home care or care. So the number that I came up with, you guys are like, well, what's that number? So these are 2010, 2011 tax returns. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with it, but I want you guys to see we did like 1.6 million in 2010, but our profit was only 45,000. In 2011, we jumped up to 2.7, and we were able to 5x our profits. So I didn't do that every year. I wish I did, but this was the year of my transformation. So a little bit about my story. I met my wife at a transformational seminar in Orlando. Love at first sight, you can call it. So I'm not going to tell you my pickup line because it's really bad. It's really bad.
It works.
It works somehow. 4 kids later. So married, start a business, have a child, all within a year, which was kind of crazy. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So that was our firstborn. For me, my deepest desire was really owning a business, right? Because in my mind, there's this freedom associated with having your own business and being able to be your own boss and decide how you want to spend your time. Growing up, I also struggled with confidence issues, right? This picture of me is me trying to sort of, maybe Tony Robbins taught me how to do this, like reprogram my thought. It says, I am perfect, I am enough. It was really more about trying to reprogram how I think, because I am a big believer that your mindset impacts your success in business and in life. So aside from like wanting to be my own boss, one of my big motivators for wanting to get into the home care industry is my grandmother, right? So I experienced what it was like for her as she was aging, and my grandfather passed away from leukemia. My grandmother didn't drive, she didn't know how to write a check. Thankfully, my parents retired and moved down to Florida, and were helping her. My mom goes to the house one day, sees blood all over the toilet, and she's like, Mom, what is that? So apparently when we took her to a doctor, she had a tumor in her chest. She did not want to tell us about it. This has been going on for a while because she didn't want to be a burden. Right? And sadly, within 6 months, she had passed away. That is a picture of her on her hospice bed. We didn't know about HomeCare at the time. Right? My mom aged 10 years in probably a matter of 2 years because of all of the stress of running back and forth and dealing with it. And my grandmother she's my guardian angel. When I moved to Florida, she was my family. Her and my granddad. And she still is today. But she was really my motivation. So when I had an opportunity to invest in a business and we met with a franchise broker, we kind of like, what are your goals? What do you want? For me, this seemed like a perfect and logical fit. So that's kind of how I got started in home care. I thought I had the opportunity to be my own boss, right, which we talked about. And in my mind, I'm like, with my self-confidence issues, I felt like if I can be successful in business, then I can feel good about myself. Little did I know, and most of you are probably, I'm not going to say you're here, but you've been there at some point, right, where you have this reality check of what it's like to be in home care. Right? It's a 24/7 responsibility. And as much as I thought entrepreneurship was going to be exciting and fun and give me all of these opportunities to do what I want, reality struck. And it was hard, right? I remember coming home one day to talk to my wife. It's time to go over our financials. We look at our tax returns. We realize then we look at our bank account. We had already lost a couple big cases. Like how many of you live and die by the 24/7 cases, right? So we lost a couple big cases and I remember sitting there. We look at our bank account. We're estimating 60 to 90 days of cash left to survive. My palms were sweaty. My stomach was in knots. I remember the experience of doing that. And for me, I knew I had to figure this out, right? We were about to have our second child, and I was really the one that pushed for starting a business, so I felt like it was my responsibility. So for me, failure wasn't an option. I had to figure this out. And I think it was Einstein who says the mind that created the problem is not the same mind that can solve the problem, right? So, and that's powerful for me, right? So I realized I didn't know something. I didn't have the answers even though I thought I did. So I started attending reading all the sales books, strategy books that I can get my hands on, going to seminars, trying to sort of figure all this out, learning from people that were way smarter than me because I just didn't know something. And a lot of them teach you just keep pushing through it, but it still wasn't working. It wasn't until I did a training with this guy, Jay Abraham, who teaches the strategy of preeminence, right? And what Jay did, we'll call it an exchange, right? He exchanged with this other company that was doing 400% greater than its closest competitor. That's a lot, guys. I don't care what industry you're in. If you're 400% greater than your closest competitor. And so Jay said, all right, I'll give you does anyone know Jay Abraham or heard of him? Yeah, a couple of people. Jay Abraham.
Alabama?
No, I think he's out. Well, I know he's out in California. Anyway, he's actually a marketing mentor for Tony Robbins, and he's also, I think it was Forbes who, and this is years ago, voted him top 5 executive coach in the country. So he knows a lot about sales and marketing, and I did a training program with him. And he taught this strategy. Because basically when he did the exchange, he took 400 pages of notes, and I learned this, and I started to learn how to apply it to my home care business. All right, and as we did it, some things started to work, but it still wasn't enough. So I had to continue to test and tweak and sort of systemize the process. And when we did, and this is how we systemized it. So we took the strategies and we applied it to our outbound sales call process, our intake call process, our living room visit process, even our marketing. Although we had some limitations on what we could do because it was a franchise. But ultimately, you guys saw the results of what happened. Oops, let me go back. So for us, after we applied this stuff, we were able to hire more staff, we had more freedom, increased revenue, profit, happier employees. We kept our caregivers busy, right? They liked that, which helped with retention. And I think more the personal transformation side for me is no longer feeling like a failure for my family. So how many of you guys can relate to this, right? I'm going to say this is the hard way. You're out selling, you're networking for business. So I don't know, do any of you guys advertise? Just curious. Has it worked for you?
No.
Okay. For me, we tested, we did a radio ad, and we did the senior directory, and a lot of money that, I'm not saying advertising doesn't work, I believe in advertising, but it wasn't effective. Hired the wrong person to sell. We probably easily, I'm going to say easily $30,000 or more in hiring the wrong people. Has anyone ever hired a salesperson? Yeah? Anyone hired not the best salesperson, to put it kindly? And we fix that eventually. But anyway, then you try to train them properly if you have the time. You do your best to convert prospects, follow up when you can. You keep pushing to sell, market, deliver. Pray your caregivers show up. Pray they stay awake. Take on difficult customers because you need the revenue. Pressure to keep cash flowing, all while running around like a chicken.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, yeah, everyone's... For those of you who have never done that, you're not in business yet. No, or you're like Eddie and you probably have a big team. So if you've been struggling, this is probably why it took me close to 5 years to kind of figure this all out. The first 3 years, we did not vacation, we did not travel. The only time we went out of town was when the franchise did our annual convention that we had to attend. Otherwise, we get fined. So that was the only time. So I'm going to talk about 2 of the strategies. There's 4 or 5 that I teach in my training program. That's sort of the basis for all of this, but I'm going to talk about 2 of them today. The first one, this is where we get into some of the meat and potatoes, is flipping the script. So you can significantly increase your sales without selling anything or being quote unquote salesy. So I'll talk to you about what that means. So how many of you don't like selling? Thank you. All right. Just be honest. When I first started selling, I'm doing it now 25 years, I hated it. Especially my first real sales job was selling above ground pools. Their process was, I'm going to say, manipulative. I did not like it. I would literally, it's not me, but it kind of looks like me. It's not a joke. I would literally go into the bathroom, cry, say, okay, you can do this, go back out and do what I had to do. And I kept that job through the summer because my mom's like, don't ever quit. So I didn't, but I didn't like it. We're not all cut out to sell. Yet, it's one of the most important skills that you can have, that you need to have to run your business. So even if you don't want to be the salesperson, right? Even if you don't want to be that person, you have to know the skills to be able to manage someone properly. You get that? Yes? Does that make sense? You have to know how to do it. This makes me laugh. How many of you have people on your team that kind of look like this when it comes to selling? I laugh because the one with the big eyes, it's not her, but it looked like one of my branch managers. So whenever I see this, I laugh because I found the pictures like, I've got to use this. Right? My nurse selling. Most people that are in healthcare, you're in healthcare because you want to help people, right? Yes? And at the same time, you still need to be able to convert your prospects, especially now as the landscape gets more competitive. So I laugh at this. I knew this was important, so I used to make sure I would stress the point. I don't want to say put pressure, but I would stress the point with my team, like, we have to convert. Like, we have to be able to convert our clients. When that phone rings, we've got to treat it like that's the lifeblood of our business, right? It really is. We work so hard to get that phone to ring, and then when they come in the door, we've got to convert. So they used to be like, no, I don't want the pressure, right? So we had to kind of work on that a little bit. One of the things that you have to understand about selling is that, so there's the prospect, there's you. It's all about building trust, right? And we know that. It's all about building trust. You have to be able to instantaneously establish connection, make them comfortable, and when you've built that trust, you can gently influence them to make the right decision for them, right? We're not here to force people or manipulate people, but if you don't do this part, you're going to struggle, and your team's going to struggle. I already said this. So for us, like when we were going through this process in our business, we were struggling, and I started like testing different things. I get a call from this lady, Amy, right? And we had did an assessment like 6 months earlier for her mom. Sadly, we never started the case because her mom had passed away before we were able to start. But I get a call out of the blue, and she's like, my mother-in-law needs care. And I was like, well, how did you remember me? She's like, I remember the story you told me about your grandmother. And suddenly I was like, oh, wow, so maybe this is working, right? And what I'm talking about is being able to use story in your business to connect with people and to become memorable. I call it flipping the script. And you can use it in a number of different ways in your business. Instead of pushing and selling, or like we were taught to spit out a bunch of differentiators, like we're good at this and we're great at this. How many of you do that? I'm not bashing you. I did it too. So how many of you, when you're out selling, you talk about like your differentiators and why your company's better? Okay, thank you. Everyone's like, yeah, sort of. Some people are afraid to raise their hand. That's just the way most people are taught to sell. This really is more about thoughtful and strategic connecting and gelling with people, and we'll talk more about that. So it's all, in sales, I learned this at one of my other sales jobs when I was selling advertising. It's all about the guard, right? Think about a time when you went to go purchase like a mid or a high ticket item. Think about maybe going to buy a car. And maybe not everyone's going to resonate with this experience, but a lot of times when people are going to buy something, their guard's up, right? They know someone's going to try to sell them something, especially if they've already talked to 2 or 3 different agencies who are like, we're the best and we have the best caregivers and our service is awesome and we're really good and you should use us, right? So their guard's kind of up, and your job is to continue to get that guard or get that shield down little by little through building trust. I'm going to show you a little way that we do that. So it's really based on the focus of the interaction. So you've got me selling, right? Me selling is you're talking about you and why you're so awesome. And what happens is the shield starts to go up. On the other end of the spectrum, you have client-focused selling, which is where you're focusing on the client. Now, the good news is that most people in home care do a lot of client-focused selling, right? Because you care about your client and you care about their well-being. And that's a good thing. And when you're doing that, the shield starts to go down. Here's where people fail. It's in the ineffective, they're not effectively positioning their agency the right way. And when you're not effectively positioning your agency in the mind of the prospect, you're going to have limited results. So preeminent selling, a lot of it is about strategic trust building, right? And when you're strategically building trust and positioning the right way, you're doing client-focused selling, but you're also getting your message across without doing it in a salesy way. Does that make sense? Yes?
Yes.
All right, good. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about the science of story. So there's actually research that supports what I'm talking about and how storytelling affects and impacts the brain. So neural coupling is something that happens where it activates parts of the brain in the listener that allows them to, or that has them thinking that the story is coming through them. They have them thinking that's coming through them because it affects that part of the brain. Mirroring, right? So mirroring is the listener will not only experience similar brain activity to the person telling the story. What ends up happening is you start to feel closer to that person, right? So mirroring. In sales, and I'm not saying to do this in a manipulative way, but in sales, they teach you to mirror tonality, mirror even movements, speed, rhythm, those types of things, because when you're doing that, people automatically start to feel more connected with you. Story does that automatically without you having to do all of those things, although those things can help. Now, when you tell a story that has impact, right? When you tell a story that has impact, dopamine is released in the brain. Okay, when this happens, people will remember you. Okay? So when you tell an effective story, and I think that's what happened with Amy. 6 months earlier, I said something, she connected with it, and when it came time to wanting to use HomeCare again, she remembered me over the other companies that she met with. And then we talk about cortex activity, right? So when you talk about facts, it only impacts like 2 parts of the brain, whereas story impacts several other parts of the brain. So this is the science behind it. You guys getting that? You see how powerful that can be? So a little bit more about story is that it can also help, increase perceived value. So does anyone know what perceived value is? Any thoughts? What's your...
Making your service seem like it's really better than maybe it is.
That's one way to look at it. It's right.
And they can't live without it. I mean,
Right. Perceived value, it's how the consumer perceives your services in their mind, the value that it will deliver to them. So it's the perception of the value that it will deliver to them. It's not to say your service is good or bad or better than what it is or not. It's just how they perceive it. Does that make sense?
Ideas get them think it's worth more than pay.
Can you say that again?
Ideas get them think it's worth more than pay.
So there was an experiment that was done by this guy Rob Walker and Joshua Glenn, and you can Google it, where they bought hundreds of thrift store items and they purchased them for like $1.25, and they asked 200 writers to contribute narratives to the items and auctioned them off on eBay, and they raised nearly $8,000, which is a 2,700% increase just by a story associated with it. So there are strategic ways to use story, right? You can use to overcome the most common objections. So blow-offs from your referral sources, sharing your origin story and generating rapport quickly, highlighting your expertise in handling specific types of cases. So you can use, instead of saying, like, we're awesome at this because we do this, 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 and this. Now, I'm not saying not to differentiate. I'm a big believer in differentiation. All this is saying is how you communicate that, right? When you do it in facts, it doesn't connect as much as it does when you talk about a story or an example of serving a client in a specific way, right? And then you can highlight that differentiator without it being a fact. It's now a story that they can relate to. You can position your company to shine in areas that are most important to them. So what I mean by that is, like when I teach people, when you're out selling, right, when you're out marketing and you're talking to referral sources, you're trying to identify, like, you do what I call pre-qualifying. You try to find out what's important to them, right? And then when you go back and actually have a meeting with them, now you can position using story versus just being the, like I call it the throw up approach, where you literally like throw up all over them. I wanted to show a story that Budweiser used in the Super Bowl commercial, right? You guys know how much it costs to advertise in the Super Bowl, right? A lot of money. So Google has done this, Budweiser has done this, but Budweiser used it to advertise their origin story, like how they started the company, which is one of the things I teach you guys how to do, is to like your origin story, your why. And it got, I forget the numbers, just so many more views on YouTube than any other commercial. And if I can play it, I wish I could, and I'll send you guys the link if you want it, but like even if you don't drink beer, you're gonna wanna either invest in Budweiser or go buy a case.
Why you can't do it?
What?
Why you can't do it?
Because I don't know how to, I don't know if there's volume connected, so I'll try it. I don't know if there's volume connected to this. Oh wait, and there's no video.
Oh.
Wait, let's see if the, no, yeah, there's no internet, so sorry guys. So who can use this? All right, so how can you use this in your process? When anyone on your team handles intake calls, your nurse or whoever handles the patient assessments, your salesperson, you want them incorporating this into their, I call it like their little tool belt. The owner, obviously, and the same strategy can be used for recruiting as well, to get the caregivers excited about working for your company over someone else. Right? And if you're not doing that, you should be, like helping your caregivers buy into the vision of your company. See, most people think that all caregivers care about is money, and while that plays a role in it, it's not, and there's surveys done on this all the time, it's like number 3 or number 4 on the list. Right? They want to believe in what they're doing. Now, I'm not speaking about everybody. You're all going to say, like, well, not this caregiver. She just cares about the money. Right? You're going to have caregivers who just care about the money. But as a majority, they want to be bought into what you guys are doing. Right? And they bless you. And they want to be respected. Right? You want to treat them with respect. Money plays a part in it, but it's not, you just because someone is paying 11 or 12, you don't have to compete on that. So anyway, I digress a little bit. So questions I often get asked by people: can my staff do this? Right? You think, can my staff do it? Yes, they can do this, but you as the owner have to be willing to introduce it and practice it with them. How difficult is it to come up with stories? It's not hard. There's a model that we follow that's based on, it's really based on like the same formula that they use in blockbuster movies. Right? Because would you agree that some of the best movies, they know how to capture your attention and your emotion? Yes? Yeah. Right? There's a science to it. There's an art and a science to it. So what if I don't have any stories? Everyone has a story. All right? You all have a story. It's just kind of pulling it out of yourself to figure out like why and how to communicate it effectively. And when I say effectively, you want to evoke some type of emotion or feeling. So you all have a story. And even if you don't, you can borrow a story as long as you don't claim it's your own story. You can borrow stories. It's more powerful if it's your story, but even if it's not, it's still effective. It's just more effective when it's coming through you. And you all have stories, right? You can think about clients that you've served. You can think about like your own personal reason, like really when you dig and think, like, why did I get into this business? And then you can effectively communicate that. It's just so powerful. So you guys can now see, hopefully, that with story, it's possible to sell without having to, quote unquote, sell or be salesy. And when I talk about that, I'm talking about like just spitting out differentiators or telling. Do you guys honestly think that your clients haven't heard that before, that your caregivers are the best? honestly, I'm not trying to bash you or anyone. Like, they've heard that repeatedly, or that my service is awesome, right? And it's hard, and it may be true. Like, your service is better, but they've heard that. So when you can communicate it using like examples or story, it's so much more powerful than just saying it. Does that make sense? Yes? All right, cool. All right, so the way it starts, secret number 2, sales strategy of preeminence. So the way that you were taught to sell, if you were taught at all, is actually costing you money. So I'm going to talk about what I mean by that. So these are some of the different things that I've seen. Spray and pray, beg and guilt method, high pressure, BFF paralysis, which we'll talk about, the throw up approach. It's funny, but it's true. So when I first got into the business, we would go to every assisted living facility. We would go to every networking group that we can get our face in front of. I would even go to medical towers and knock on doors, nursing homes, rehabs, elderly attorneys, the list goes on. And I would literally spray the market and then pray. Please send me a referral. Please send me a referral. Like, the reality is that we got some, obviously, but when you're able to market in a more strategic way, a more focused way, you'll be much more effective than just going everywhere and trying to be all things to all people. All right, the begging and guilt method. Anyone guilty of this? Anyone? So the begging and guilt method. Please send me a referral. Like, I've been here for so long. Sometimes salespeople will do this. Like, I need to hit my numbers. Can you please send me a referral? High pressure tactics. At one point in our system, we were taught, or one of the teachers that came out to teach us would say, once you go somewhere 8-10 times, I've not given you something, you got to change your approach and start to say, listen, I've been coming out here, I need a referral if I'm going to keep coming out. It doesn't really work, right? It doesn't work. It's not the most effective way of doing it. All right, so how many people have been guilty of this? I know I have, all right, and you don't know what it is yet. So I call it best friends forever paralysis, right? I remember this place, Fletcher Health and Rehab. I used to go talk to Melissa. And we started building up a friendship, and like she'd tell me about her relationship. All right, that's awesome. We're really close. And then I was afraid to ask her for a referral because I didn't want to tarnish the relationship. Anybody guilty of that? It's okay if you are. Anyone? No one? I'm the only one. All right, thank you. It's like, am I the only one that's ever done that? So the reality is that you can still have a friendship with someone, when you approach selling the right way out in the field. You can have a relationship with someone, but when you set up that relationship the right way, it's our job to go out and build our business. So you can do both. Like, you can connect with people, and you can set the expectation that you're going to be asking for referrals. This is a throw-up approach. Right? I've already harped on this enough. That's how we were taught, is to, people call up or even out in the field. And I remember this vividly, right? I was so excited about our service. Like, we set up like these differentiators, and I had this whole wellness program that I put together in our business. And I finally got into Medicare, and I finally got a chance to talk to the social workers. And I do my meeting, right? What I teach is like, you set up like this 10-minute meeting, and finally get out there, and I'm like, so we've got a nurse that supervises all our cases, and we're on call 24/7, and let me tell you about our wellness program. And I could start to see the look in their eyes start glazing over, right? And they're just like, okay, Greg, that's really cool. They didn't say that, but their energy was telling me that. I knew it. So it's not the right way to approach selling. And needless to say, I didn't get a referral that day. They're like, okay, great. Thank you, Greg, for coming out here. We'll put you on the list. Have you ever been put on the list before? Yeah. I've been on the list. Now, again, I'm not just saying that none of these will never work. I'm just sharing with you, it's not the most effective way to market your business. And what ends up happening, even if you don't realize it in the moment, is that when you're spraying and praying, you're doing all these things, you're doing the throw-up approach, you're wasting time and you're wasting money. And you're wasting it in opportunity cost. So the problem is that you get caught in that trap where you don't see the dollars going down the toilet, but it's happening because you're not getting enough referrals, you don't have that consistency of business, and you have opportunity costs because you're either wasting time or you're not getting the results, right? How many of you can relate to that to some extent? Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Right, for us, the revenue numbers tell the story, right? So this is how, this is your best guide. So I don't need anyone else to tell me anything, right? Your revenue numbers are going to tell you where you are. There's no skirting around it, right? There's no way around it. It's that's telling you where you are. That's telling you how effective you are communicating your message and marketing in the marketplace. So with the strategy of preeminence, for us, when I learned about how to apply that to our business, it taught me a way to connect more quickly with my clients, to be able to position us in the minds of our referral sources, and most importantly, Sales 101, if you're not doing this, to also be asking for the referral. So many people that go out there, build a relationship, but then they don't ask. Right? And I've been guilty of it. So again, this is never about judgment. But when you're able to do all those things, connect, position, and ask, it gets easier. And you'll start to see better results within your business. So these are some of the concepts. It's too broad of a topic to even be able to cover in 1 hour. But these are some of the concepts of the strategy of preeminence, right? It's about leadership and expert positioning. It connects both the minds and the hearts. Why is that important? Does anyone know? Why is it important to connect the mind as well as the heart? How do people make purchasing decisions?
Therein lies the sale.
Do people make buying decisions based purely on logic? On emotion, right? That's reality. People make buying decisions by emotion. They use logic to reinforce their decision, but the decision is made based on emotion. And then it helps with the perception of you as the go-to company. So this is an oversimplification of some of the concepts. Serving versus selling. So one of the things that Jay talks about is if you truly believe that what you have is useful and valuable to your clients. Yeah. How many of you believe that what you have is valuable to your clients? Thank you. Then you have a moral obligation to try to serve them in every way possible. Yes. That for me gave me a shift in my business. That is powerful. So if you really, because if you don't believe it, then you need to do something better in your business, right? You should believe in your service. If you don't, you need to figure out a way to make it better. But if you truly believe that what you have is valuable and useful, then you have a moral obligation to serve them. Accelerated trust building, right? Accelerated trust building, we've talked a little bit about it. Story helps you build that connection and build trust. Authoritative positioning is positioning you as an authority in your marketplace. And there's ways to do that. I positioned myself as an authority in the marketplace, and I had only been in the industry for a couple of years. I had no healthcare experience prior. I'm not saying to be false, but you can position yourself in the marketplace as an authority. And this is a powerful one. Giving good advice versus good information. Giving good advice versus good information. Good advice is you should probably have someone come in here and help you. That's good advice, but that's good information. Good advice is, here's why I think you should have someone come in here with you. I've been watching you walk, and I saw that your gait was off. And you told me that when we first started talking, that it was important for you to maintain independence in your home. Right? You told me that. Is that still important to you? Yes, right? Because we talked about it. So here is why, if that's the goal that you have, here is why I think you should have someone out here at least 4 hours a day, 7 days a week. Right? And then maybe incorporate a story. Mrs. Jones did not do this, and I'm sure I'll tell them, like, I do not say this to scare you. It's just a reality. Falls is the leading cause of injury death in older adults. Did you guys know that? Right? You know that. But how are you communicating that message to your clients so that it ties in with their objectives? That's good advice versus just good information. All right. Providing focus. All right. So providing focus. Another thing that Jay says is that people are silently looking to be led. They called you because they need help. They called you because they needed help. And oftentimes, we put the power in their hands, and we don't guide them the right way. And they're calling us for guidance. And yet we let them drive the boat, so to speak. When people are calling in, they want you to take them by the hands and walk them through and guide them the right way. And provide focus, the whys and the hows. Asking the right questions from the beginning, from the client's perspective. So when you truly put yourself in the shoes of the consumer, like, what do they want, what's important to them? A lot of people will start to make a recommendation without asking all the right questions. Questions is one of the most powerful things you can do in sales. Like when I would do intake calls, I feel like 10, 15, sometimes even 20 minutes of my time was asking questions. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to identify their fears, their frustrations, their hopes, their desires, their goals. When you ask the right questions from their perspective, then and only then can you present a solution. You have to understand them and their needs before fully presenting a solution. And then selling end results. All right, so what does that mean? When you really understand what their ultimate objective is, and what's challenging with HomeCare is that you're kind of selling results to two different people. You're selling it to the kids, right, because they have one motivation, and then you're selling it to the patient, the person receiving care, because they have a different motivation. And it's sort of this balancing act. Oftentimes the intake call is mostly with the kids, and then the living room visit, it's with the kids, but now you also have the patient that you have to attend to. And understanding both of those, both of their ultimate goals and end results, is what will help you when you're doing your positioning. So the strategy of preeminence, it's just a newer way of selling, or at least for our business. And when we applied it systematically, that's where it really helped us gain some traction. So there's steps in a quality field sales call. I can't go deep on all of these, but first step obviously is identifying the source. Like, who are you going to target? Why is that your target? No spray and pray and just hope that someone gives you business. You really want to get strategic about how you do it. Connecting and leveraging the relationship with, I call them the window princess, right? Some people call them the gatekeeper. And it's just, when you think of a gatekeeper, something happens energetically when you're looking at them as a gatekeeper versus a princess. You want to really build a relationship with them. One of my clients, I love this idea. I forget what title he got, but he bought like a nameplate, or what are those called that you keep on your desk, right? A little nameplate, and that said, President of Guest Services or something like that, and he gave it to his window princesses. And it's funny, but it's powerful, right? Because they're going to remember you, and they have the inside information of, like, when should I call in the social worker? You know, when's the best time to come out here? They might even put in a good word for you. So don't overlook that. Pre-qualifying, identifying the needs first, and I'm setting a follow-up. So this is all when you finally get to talk to someone on the first call. But you don't sell on the first call, right? You're there you're just asking questions, pre-qualifying, identifying needs, and then you're setting a follow-up. Then story compilation, trust meeting prep, I call it, right? So once you've identified the needs, then you can start figuring out like how you're going to position. Then you have what I call the trust building meeting, because that's really what it is. They're going to refer to you if they trust you. So the trust building meeting is where you get to present your services in a way that they'll remember. And then creating the value add follow-up call plan, right? Because people always wonder, like, how do I follow up? What am I going to do when I go back? You want to continue to add value to the relationship. You want to continue to add value to the relationship. So if you're not doing that, you're probably just like everybody else. Who do you think that they're going to be more inclined to want to work with? Is it someone who's constantly just asking? Now, trust me, I teach you to ask, but you want to build value first and ask afterwards. Right? And when you're going there and all you're doing is asking without building value, that's not how you grow your business the right way. All right, so then the full implementation of the strategy, because I can't go through all of them, that's just the field sales calls. Then you take the same concept and you apply them to the intake call process. Same thing with the living room visits, and the same thing with your marketing. So it creates what's called a multiplier effect. All right, so for us, and does anyone know what a multiplier effect is or have any idea what I'm referring to? No, not yet? All right. Go ahead. Take a stab. Anyone want to take a stab at it? Anyone? No? He's like, no. All right. So one of the things I learned about business is that if you are able to make incremental improvements in multiple parts of your business, that is how it creates a multiplier effect. So if you're able to increase your conversions, first increase the number of referrals that you get, then you increase your conversion rate on the intake calls, then you increase your conversion rate from living room visit to new cases, and you incrementally improve all of those, it creates this multiplier effect. So I'm going to give you an example. 2010, so we did intakes or intake calls. All right, we did 308. In 2011, we increased that by 12%. So we had 346. Our assessment conversion rate. So do you guys track this stuff in your business? I'm just curious. Yeah. No, it's a serious question because we didn't at first. It's just you've got so many other responsibilities, but you need to be tracking. I call them your KPIs. If you're not doing this, you have to do this in your business because you're not going to figure out where your leaky buckets are if you don't know where you have room for improvement, right? So you should be tracking, and honestly, you should be doing it for each position in your company. So everyone in your company has 3 or 4 key measurable activities that you can track. And that's how you hold them accountable. And when you're holding them to those 3 or 4 key activities, they're called key performance indicators, then you can see where the improvements need to happen. So a multiplier effect is about incremental improvements in multiple parts of your company, and then you start to see massive growth. So for us, we improved 12%, 11%, 12%. We increased 48 patients year over year. That's how we ended up with over $1 million in growth. No advertising, no salespeople, right? It's all incremental improvement. So that is called the multiplier effect. And when you do that, and then you improve the referrals you're getting from your current clients, you improve your internet marketing strategy, when you start to improve it, even if it's just 2, 3, 5%, you'll start to see a snowball effect in your business. So hopefully now you guys can see that the way we were taught to sell, if you were taught at all, there's a lot of people that just weren't taught how to sell. And that's okay, but it's costing you money, right? And it's costing you in missed opportunities. So when we were finally able to make these changes, I say this happened, because it really did. I went from being chained to my business to, and it didn't all happen overnight. I don't want you guys, yes, we had $1 million in growth. It wasn't really until the last 2 or 3 years in the business where we were more free, right? Where I had someone running my day-to-day, and we were managing them to their KPIs. And when you're able to manage them to their KPIs, that's how you can run your business. You don't have to be the business. Like for me, the last thing I wanted to give up was the living room visits, because that was my favorite part. And I just love sitting in there with the families and listening to their stories. And but the reality is that you guys are one system away. It's one sales system away, and you can't improve your system if you're not tracking. All right, so I've got a question for you. Do you guys think that if you had the strategy of Preeminent as a foundation within your business, and your team bought into this as a foundational approach, and you got good or just even decent at flipping the script on your intake calls, on your referrals, using story as a key component for that, do you think that would help you grow your business? Yes? Thank you. Yes? The rest of you know. That's cool. That's okay. And that's okay. So how many of you, I know I went through a decent amount of stuff pretty quickly. Do any of you feel like this right now, where we've talked about a decent amount of stuff, but you still have questions? Or like you drank from a fire hose? I know my first year in HomeCare, I felt like this. Right? There's so much between compliance and hiring and all this stuff. So is it okay if I take a few minutes now? We're done with sort of the training part. If I take a few minutes, I don't know how we are on time, Beth, so just tell me.
About 15.
Okay, that would be fine. Is it okay if I take a few minutes to go over that?
Yes.
You don't have to sit in here and listen to that, but this is for those of you that do want to learn how to apply this to your business or work with us further. So what I put together, one of my main products that I offer, it's the 6-week HomeCare Revenue Optimizer Masterclass. So it's an online version, so you can do it at your own leisure. Some people do it in 6 weeks, some people do it in 4 weeks, some people do it in 400 weeks. So you go at your own pace, but it is designed to, I designed it this way intentionally, right? I did it because I've been to trainings before where you're there for sometimes 2 or 3 days and you get all these awesome ideas, and then you come back and you're just overwhelmed and you do nothing, right? Some of you have been there. Yeah, I know you said yes before. So this is designed so this way you learn a concept, you learn a strategy, then you implement it. And then you come back and you learn a strategy, you learn a concept, and then you implement it, right? Because again, if you don't apply it, you're not going to see the benefit of learning. You have to be able to apply it. So it's really designed for that. And this is ultimately sort of the foundation of the course. So you've got the Preeminence Sales Foundational Tool, the same strategy that I learned from Jay for that company that was doing 400% better than its closest competitor. It's just a foundation, all right? It's a philosophical approach to business, but there's core elements to it. And this first week is really about building that foundation, because this is kind of the best way to explain it. Like if you build a house and you don't have a solid foundation, what happens to the house? It falls down, right? Like your business cannot sustain growth if you don't have the right foundation. So this helps build a foundation on a sales and a growth mindset, but from the perspective of your clients, right? Loving your customer in the right way, but teaching you how to position the right way. So week number 2 is about flipping the script on the intake call process. It's learning how to really master story using the concepts that are the format that's used in blockbuster movies. One of the biggest, I'll say, challenges people have about investing in these types of programs is time, right? How many of you feel like you struggle with time a little bit? Right? I'm not sure if I'll have enough time to implement this. So you don't have to train your entire team. Basically, with this platform, I will give you access to your team members so they can improve their skills in certain areas. Right? We have, like, some people have their person that does intake calls do that part of the training. Some people will have their person that does living room visits do that part of the training. Your salesperson is probably going to do 3 or 4 parts of the training. So I've set it up where it says access for up to 5 people, but ultimately your entire team will have access to it. Normally I charge, like, for each additional person that gets access to it, they get their own username and password, I charge $200. But I'm including that as part of the program. This is what it looks like, right? So it's an online platform, and essentially, like, you click on week 1, and it will drop down all the lessons for week 1, and they're bite-sized lessons. So there's usually like anywhere from like 5 to 12 lessons a week, but they might be 5 minutes, and then some of them go up to like 30 to 35 minutes. So that's kind of how it's all set up. So one of the other products that I offer is hiring onboard, and by the way, this is all like a bundle. So I'm doing all of this as a bundle, but I want you guys to see what's included. Hiring great salespeople, right? We've all raised our hand. I know so many people have challenges hiring great salespeople. I did too. I wasted a lot of money until I learned how to do it the right way. There's certain characteristics when it comes to hiring salespeople that are critical. I am a big believer in using personality profiles, and while I don't believe that's the end-all be-all, it is a great tool. And when you learn the right characteristics to hire, and you ask the right questions, and you set up the framework the right way, you minimize your risk greatly. So it wasn't until the last couple of years in the business that we finally got the right salespeople. That's how I was able to finally, that was one of the pieces that helped me step away, but it was a big piece because I needed someone that could go out and market. No one's going to sell like the owner with the level of passion that the owner has, but you can still find good salespeople. And when you set this up the right way and you have the right onboarding process, your risk goes down and your production goes up. So when I say the word scripts, some people are like, oh, I don't like scripts. I don't like my team reading from scripts because it sounds scripted, right? But when they understand the framework on how to do a proper intake call, when they understand that and the psychology behind it, you're going to have much more effectiveness. So I included the scripts that I used in my business as part of this. I put a value of 797. A lot of people, when it comes to the story part, I teach people to create a story inventory that you can use. And some people get scared away by that because they're like, I'm coming up with all these stories. You don't have to do it all at once. The one thing you want to invest a lot of time in is your origin story. Like, that is important. You want to have that. But you also want to create an inventory of stories. So I included our inventory of stories, not that you can just take, but that you can take and tweak and just get some ideas. So the last piece is for me, I said earlier, hiring salespeople was important, but really the piece that enabled me to step away from the business was sort of a model that I learned from. Has anyone ever read a book called Traction? Gino Wickman, you did? What did you think of it?
That was great.
It's awesome. So we hired their consultant to come into our business, and I think they charge like, I want to say it was like $5,000 a month. It was a lot of money that we invested, but it really helped us in our business, because when you have the right sales systems in place, the book is about having systems in your business as an entrepreneurial operating system. The piece that I'm including is how I applied this to my sales systems, because that's sort of what freed us up. What data to look at, how to handle certain situations or outside the lines, creating a vision. The key component with this, because traction is all about, the word sums it up perfectly, it's all about getting traction in your business, right? So there's things that you're going to track and you're going to measure. You're not going to focus on 100 things, you're going to focus on the most important things, and then you set a weekly cadence for your sales meetings. So we took this, applied it to our home care business, and this particular section is about the sales process within the business. So some of you might not be there yet. Some of you are there and you're like, that's cool. Others are going to be like, eventually you'll get there. But I've included it as part of the package that we sell for $14.95 on our website. So ultimately, what I did is I put the package together. Whatever, we'll get through that part. So for you know what we sell for on our website. Ultimately, I offered it $7.97 for the people that are as part of this program today. So if it's something that you guys are interested in, you don't have to decide right at the moment, but I have it as, I have it set up on my website where you can order it online, or you can order it today, where we offer for $7.97 through the weekend. So I offer a 30-day guarantee. I do that because there's some people that are like, I'm really interested, but I'm not sure. So you have 30 days to go through it to see if it's for you. And if it's not, you just shoot me an email and say, hey, I invested, but I don't want this. I've not had any returns yet. It's not to say that it will never happen in the future, but so that's everything that comes with it. The 6-week Optimizer Masterclass, entire access for the entire team, hiring your next sales superstar, intake calls, living room visits, scripts and framework, inventories of stories, sales management results system for a total value of $67.81. Oh yeah, there were 2 more bonuses I offer for you guys. So does anyone use Voxer? No, does anyone know what Voxer is? All right, it's a really neat app on your phone. It's kind of like a walkie-talkie. It's totally free. But what I do with my clients that invest, and I can't do this with everyone, so I can only do it for the first 5 people that decide to invest. But basically, what my clients do is they'll send me a box and say, hey, Greg, I've got this situation. I'm working on building my dream team, and here's what I'm thinking. What do you think? So for the first 5 people, you can access it, me personally, to ask me strategic questions or how to apply this. It's not unlimited. You can do it up to 3 times per week for the 6 weeks that you're in the program. It's kind of like having your own personal strategic coach. So I decided to offer that for you guys. And like I said, everyone can access on your team the masterclass. It's not like some people in the industry give you access to their program for a year. This is forever, right? You have it forever. To help you optimize and multiply and grow. For those of you that I just don't have the cash flow right now, I did set up with PayPal. So if you wanted to invest in the program, you can do it through PayPal. That you'll have to do online, but basically you have no payment, no interest if paid off within 6 months. So you can invest in the program, you can check it out. I try to do everything to make it easier for you guys. So that's it. That's everything. You guys have any questions about the program or about what we talked about today?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
What do you get? What do you get for $7.97?
All of it.
Oh,
Yeah, I put it all together as a package. I know what I needed in my business and what most home care, because I was in a franchise, so I talked to other owners and I know what owners struggle with. I was an owner and I talk to owners, right, and I know the things that they're dealing with. So this is all the stuff that I wish I had in year 1 or 2, and granted, it's stuff that helped me get over the hump in year, what was it, 2010? But it's also stuff that I've learned over the past few years as well. So I've taken everything that, like from systemizing our business with sales to like the sales strategies and tactics, and I put it in there for everyone to help ensure success, right? And so if you take it, you're not going to be able to do it all at once. You just have to do it in bite-sized pieces, and that's why I set it up that way.
Yeah.
So does that make sense?
It's all online?
It's all online. It's all digital. Now online there are, so it's videos but with PDFs, and I also have support tools. So I have like checklists and those types of things that you can print out. So what my clients do is they'll take it, they'll get a binder, they'll go through each section, and they'll just print up the PDFs, and they'll print up the support tools, and they'll put it in their binder. And then as they go through a section, they'll take notes, and then start to implement, and then share it with their team.
So you don't send out that display you have? This is all online?
Which display?
You show the videos and this?
That's online, yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay.
that's what, I just want you guys to see what it looks like.
Okay.
So when you go online, you can pick which lesson you want to do. I mean, not everyone has to go through it in succession, but I do encourage it because it does kind of build on the next.
Does it, can you revisit it at a later date?
Oh,
after you
yeah,
complete the
this is
program,
in
like
depth.
next year?
Yes.
It's still, okay.
Yes, yeah, because I know that there's going to be some people that aren't ready to implement the sales management system yet. But as they grow their business and they start to build their sales team, now you want to do that lesson, so this way you know, like, how do I hold my salesperson accountable? What are the key performance metrics? Like, how am I going to track them? And then I give you all these tools that you can use so you can see what I did in my business. And everyone's business is going to be slightly different, but for the most part, it's, we're marketing the same services, it's just there's going to be some variations that you can tweak. Any other questions? Sure.
Would you mind sharing the slides from today? So, because there was a lot of information.
Yeah, no
Just
problem.
email you and then you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or you can give them to me if you want to.
Okay, yeah, I can give them to Beth, and then she can email them out to the group, so you guys can have the slides. And I don't know that I'll have this done yet, because I have video recording, but if I do, I'll send that out as well. Would that be helpful?
Be sure that y'all signed in also, and be sure we've got your email and all that. So if you did not sign in and email, please be sure to do that, and then we can get you any information like that you need.
Yeah. Any other questions about the training or the program or anything? No? All right, well, I really appreciate you guys having me out here.